Jacob Miller's trading post stood like a lonely sentinel in the vast Texas borderlands, a single wooden structure surrounded by miles of scrubland, mesquite, and the distant purple silhouettes of the Guadalupe Mountains. He'd built it 5 years ago on land nobody else wanted, betting that its location between El Paso and the mountain settlements would make it valuable for trade. He'd been right. Prospectors, ranchers, travelers, and even Apache groups stopped regularly to exchange goods, rest their horses, and gather information about trail conditions. Jacob was 32 years old, originally from Pennsylvania, with the practical mindset of someone raised in commerce rather than conflict. His father had run a general store in Philadelphia, and Jacob had learned early that business was about fair exchanges and satisfied customers, regardless of who those customers were. When he'd come west seeking opportunity, he'd brought that philosophy with him. He treated everyone the same: white settlers, Mexican vaqueros, Apache traders, as long as they had something to exchange and caused no trouble. His trading post offered basic supplies: flour, coffee, sugar, ammunition, tobacco, blankets, tools. He also kept a small selection of items specifically valued by Apache traders: quality steel knives, copper cooking pots, colored beads, and bolts of durable cloth. In return, he accepted deer hides, intricate basketwork, medicinal herbs, and occasionally worked silver jewelry that he could resell at premium prices in El Paso. It was mutually beneficial commerce, and Jacob prided himself on maintaining neutral, respectful relationships with all parties. The afternoon of May 12, 1884, started like any other. The spring heat was building, but hadn't yet reached the crushing intensity of summer. Jacob was inventorying his stock when he heard a sound at the door, a hesitant knock so light he almost missed it. He opened the door to find a young Apache boy, perhaps 12 years old, standing on his porch. The boy wore traditional clothing and moccasins, and his dark eyes watched Jacob with a mixture of hunger and uncertainty. "Hello," Jacob said, in the limited Apache he'd learned through trading. "What do you need?" The boy pointed to his mouth, then his stomach, the universal gesture for hunger. Jacob felt a pang of sympathy. The child was thin, and his clothes showed signs of hard travel. Jacob had fed hungry travelers many times before. It was simply what decent people did on the frontier, where the next meal might be days away. "Come in," Jacob said, gesturing. "So I'll get you something to eat." The boy followed him inside, and Jacob went to his personal stores, the supplies he kept separate from trading inventory for his own use. He pulled out some dried beef, hardtack biscuits, and a jar of preserves his sister had sent from Pennsylvania. He set them on the counter and gestured for the boy to eat. The child's eyes widened at the food, especially the preserves, which were a rare luxury. The boy ate quickly but not frantically, with the discipline of someone taught proper manners despite his obvious hunger. Jacob watched with satisfaction, glad to help. When the boy finished, he looked up at Jacob and spoke in Apache, words Jacob didn't fully understand. The boy seemed to be thanking him, but also trying to explain something else. Jacob caught the word for father and camp and mountains, but couldn't piece together the full meaning. "It's all right," Jacob said kindly. "You don't need to explain. You were hungry, I had food. That's how it should work." The boy hesitated, looking troubled, but then nodded and departed, heading east toward the mountains. Jacob returned to his inventory work, thinking nothing more of the encounter except a pleasant sense of having done a good deed. That comfortable ignorance lasted exactly 3 days. On the morning of May 15th, Jacob was opening his shutters when he noticed dust rising in the east, a lot of dust, the kind made by many horses moving together. His stomach tightened with unease. Large groups meant either a cavalry patrol or something more concerning. As the dust cloud drew closer, Jacob could make out individual riders, and his unease transformed into genuine alarm. These weren't soldiers. They were Apache warriors, and there were dozens of them, no more than that. As they continued to emerge from the heat shimmer, Jacob realized with growing horror that there were easily over 100. The warriors rode in organized formation, which was somehow more frightening than if they'd come in a chaotic rush. This was deliberate, planned, purposeful. They stopped approximately 50 yards from the trading post, forming a wide semicircle that effectively surrounded the building. Jacob's hands trembled as he checked his rifle, a futile gesture, since no amount of ammunition would save him if this force intended violence. But fighting wasn't his instinct anyway. He was a merchant, not a warrior. A small group of riders separated from the main body and approached. At their head was an older warrior with grey in his long hair, his face marked with the lines of age and authority. He wore a mixture of traditional Apache clothing and pieces of cavalry uniform taken in past conflicts, a common practice among warriors who'd fought the army. Behind him rode several younger men, all armed with rifles and wearing expressions of controlled anger. Jacob stepped onto his porch, hands visible and empty, his heart hammering. The lead warrior stopped his horse 10 feet from the porch and studied Jacob with dark, penetrating eyes. When he spoke, his English was accented but clear, suggesting significant contact with white settlers. "You are the trader Jacob Miller?" Jacob swallowed hard. "Yes, I am. What can I do for you?" The warrior's expression remained stern. 3 days ago, a boy came to this place. My grandson. You fed him." Jacob felt a flash of relief. Was this just about thanking him for helping the child? "Yes, I did. He was hungry. I was happy to help." The warrior's eyes narrowed. "You fed him meat and bread and the sweet preserves of white people." Jacob nodded, confused. "Yes, I gave him what I had." He seemed grateful. "Grateful," the warrior repeated, his voice carrying a dangerous edge. "My grandson was grateful because he is young and didn't fully understand the insult you gave him. But I understand. My sons understand. My people understand." Jacob felt his confusion deepen into anxiety. "Insult? I don't understand." "I helped your grandson. I fed a hungry child. How is that an insult?" The warrior dismounted and stepped closer, and Jacob could now see the controlled fury in his face. "You fed him from your own stores. You gave him food meant for yourself, food prepared in your way at your table. And you did this without asking his name, without knowing his family, without showing any respect for who he is or where he comes from. You treated my grandson like a beggar, like a stray dog you throw scraps to out of pity." Jacob's stomach dropped. "No, that's not. I didn't mean it that way. I was just trying to help." The warrior continued, his voice rising slightly. "Among our people, feeding someone is sacred. It creates bonds, obligations, relationships. When you feed someone, you acknowledge them, you honor them, you recognize their worth. But you fed my grandson carelessly, without thought, without respect. You didn't ask if his family was nearby. You didn't offer to feed them as well. You didn't inquire about his lineage or show interest in his identity. You simply gave him food and sent him away like you were dismissing him." One of the younger warriors spoke up, his English less fluent but his anger clear. "You give him food white people eat. Not Apache food. You make him eat in your house in white man's way. You show him our way of eating not good enough." "Our food not good enough?" Jacob felt panic rising. "I didn't know. I don't understand Apache customs." "I was trying to be kind. I meant no disrespect." The older warrior's expression remained hard. "Ignorance does not erase insult. My grandson returned to our camp and told us what happened. He said the trader gave him food, but asked nothing of him, showed no interest in his people, treated him as if he appeared from nowhere and would disappear to nowhere. In Apache tradition, this is a grave insult. It suggests the person has no family worth acknowledging, no lineage worth respecting, no identity worth recognizing." Jacob's mind raced. He genuinely hadn't known any of this. In his worldview, feeding someone hungry was simply the right thing to do. No complicated protocols required. But he was beginning to understand that he'd stumbled into cultural territory far more complex than he'd imagined. "I apologize," he said carefully. "My ignorance caused offense, and I'm truly sorry. What can I do to make this right?" The warrior exchanged glances with the men behind him, then looked back at Jacob. "My name is Nana. I am a war leader of the Mescalero Apache. My grandson is called Kaiwekla, and he comes from a lineage of warriors and leaders stretching back generations. When you fed him, you should have asked these things. You should have invited his family to share the meal. You should have offered gifts appropriate to his status. You should have created a proper relationship, not treated him like he was invisible." Jacob struggled to process this. How was I supposed to know he had family nearby? He came alone. He seemed lost or separated from his group. Nana's expression shifted slightly, showing perhaps a hint of acknowledgement. He was testing you. We were camped a half-day's ride away. We sent him to your trading post to see how you would treat an Apache child who came alone. Many traders cheat our children, treat them poorly, or refuse them service entirely. We wanted to know what kind of man you are." Understanding dawned on Jacob, and with it a sinking feeling. "It was a test, and I failed." Nana nodded slowly. "You did not fail in the way we expected. You did not cheat him or mistreat him, but you failed to show proper respect. You treated him as if he was alone in the world, as if his identity and family didn't matter. For this insult there must be accountability." Jacob felt fear creeping up his spine. "What kind of accountability?" Nana gestured to the assembled warriors. "I have brought my people to show you the seriousness of this insult. Among my people, to dishonor a child is to dishonor his entire family. Every warrior here has a connection to Kewikla. Cousins, uncles, members of our band. We are here because what you did affects all of us." One of the younger warriors spoke again, his hand resting on his rifle. "We should burn this place. Destroy trading post. Show that Apache children not to be treated with disrespect." Jacob's blood ran cold, but Nana held up a hand, silencing the younger man. "That is one option, but I am not yet convinced it is the right one." He looked back at Jacob. "You say you didn't know our customs. This may be true, but ignorance that causes harm must still be addressed." Jacob forced himself to think through his panic. He was a merchant. Negotiation was his strength. "You're right. Ignorance doesn't excuse harm. But I want to understand. I want to learn. Tell me what I should have done, what I should do now to make this right." Nana studied him for a long moment. "You should have asked my grandson his name. You should have asked about his family. When he told you we were camped nearby, you should have offered to send food to the camp or invited us to come and trade properly. You should have given gifts appropriate to his status, not just food, but items that show respect for his lineage." Jacob nodded, his mind working quickly. "I can do that now. I can provide food for your camp. I can offer gifts. I can learn the proper way to interact with Apache families, so I never make this mistake again." Nana's expression remained neutral. "Words are easy. Actions show truth. But even if you do these things now, it doesn't erase the original insult. The disrespect has already been shown. The question is whether you can transform that disrespect into respect through your actions going forward." Jacob felt a glimmer of hope. "I'll do whatever is necessary. This trading post exists because I trade with everyone fairly, including Apache people. I don't want to be someone who insults your culture out of ignorance. Teach me. Let me make this right." Nana turned to confer with the other warriors in rapid Apache. Jacob caught fragments, words that might mean sincerity and restitution and tradition. The discussion went on for several tense minutes while Jacob stood on his porch, acutely aware of the 100-plus warriors watching his every move. Finally, Nana turned back. "We will give you a chance to make amends, but it will not be simple. You must undergo a process to show your sincerity, to demonstrate that you understand the seriousness of what you did, and to prove that you can honor Apache customs properly. If you refuse or if you fail, then we will consider more severe consequences for the insult you gave." Jacob met his gaze steadily, despite his fear. "I'll do whatever is required. Tell me what I need to do." Nana stepped closer to the porch. "First, you will come to our camp, not as a trader, but as someone seeking to understand. You will meet my grandson properly, learn his lineage, hear his family's stories. You will bring gifts appropriate to his status and to the insult you gave. You will participate in our evening meal and eat as we eat, showing that our ways are worthy of your respect. And you will listen to our elders explain why what you did was wrong and how such situations should be handled in the future." Jacob nodded. "I can do that." "When do we leave?" Nana held up a hand. "That is only the first step. The second step is that you will sponsor a gathering here at your trading post. You will invite our band and provide a feast that honors Apache traditions. You will demonstrate publicly that you understand proper protocols for welcoming Apache people to your establishment. And you will make a formal apology to Kewikla in front of the assembled people." Jacob felt the weight of what was being asked. This would cost him significantly in supplies and time. It would also make a public statement about his relationship with the Apache, which could affect his business with white settlers who held prejudices. But looking at the armed warriors surrounding his trading post, Jacob understood he had no real choice. More than that, though, he realized they were offering him something valuable, a chance to genuinely understand a culture he'd been interacting with superficially for 5 years. "I agree to both conditions," Jacob said firmly. "I'll come to your camp, meet your grandson properly and learn what I need to know. And I'll sponsor a gathering here that honors Apache traditions and makes clear that I respect your people." Nana studied him for another long moment, then nodded slowly. "Very well. Gather what you need for 2 days' travel. You will ride with us to our camp in the mountains. Leave one warrior here to watch your trading post, so nothing is stolen in your absence. We leave within the hour." As Nana returned to his horse, Jacob retreated inside his trading post, his hands shaking as he began to pack. He'd thought he was running a simple business based on fair exchange, but he'd just learned that commerce on the frontier was far more complicated than buying and selling goods. It involved navigating cultural protocols he'd never bothered to learn, respecting traditions he'd never taken time to understand. His innocent act of feeding a hungry child had become a diplomatic crisis because he'd treated it as insignificant rather than sacred. Jacob looked around his trading post, 5 years of work that could be destroyed if he failed to make proper amends. But more than fear of loss, he felt something else, genuine curiosity and a strange sense of opportunity. Nana was offering him a chance to truly understand the Apache people he'd been trading with for years. That knowledge might not only save his business, but transform it into something more meaningful, a genuine bridge between cultures rather than just a place where goods changed hands. As he packed food, blankets and gifts he hoped would be appropriate, Jacob made a silent promise to himself. He would learn. He would listen. He would transform his ignorance into understanding, and perhaps in doing so, he would become something more than just a merchant trying to survive on the frontier. He would become someone who genuinely understood that in this harsh land, every interaction mattered, every gesture carried weight, and simple kindness without cultural awareness could be more dangerous than he'd ever imagined. The ride into the Guadalupe Mountains was unlike any journey Jacob had taken before. He rode in the center of the Apache group, surrounded by warriors who maintained an efficient silence, punctuated only by occasional exchanges in their own language. No one spoke to him directly, and Jacob understood this was intentional. He was not yet worthy of conversation. He was being transported like cargo, a problem to be dealt with rather than a person to engage with. The terrain grew increasingly rugged as they climbed, leaving behind the flat borderlands for rocky slopes covered with juniper and pinon pine. The Apache navigated the landscape with effortless familiarity, their horses picking paths that seemed impossible until Jacob found himself following them successfully. These were people who knew every stone, every water source, every hidden trail. They moved through their homeland like blood through veins, belonging to it in a way Jacob never could. After 6 hours of riding, they arrived at the camp. It was situated in a protected canyon with a reliable spring, concealed from casual observation by rock formations and dense vegetation. Jacob counted perhaps 30 wickiups, traditional Apache dwellings made from wooden poles covered with brush and hides. Smoke rose from several cooking fires, and children played near the stream while women worked on various tasks. The scene was one of ordinary domestic life, which somehow made Jacob's offense feel even worse. He'd insulted a child from this community, these families, this world that functioned with its own complete social structure. Nana dismounted and gestured for Jacob to do the same. A woman emerged from one of the larger wickiups, perhaps in her late 30s, with strong features and eyes that assessed Jacob with immediate distrust. Nana spoke to her in Apache, and Jacob caught only fragments, but her expression made clear she was not pleased with his presence. She responded sharply, gesturing toward Jacob with obvious anger. Nana replied calmly, and eventually the woman nodded stiffly before retreating back inside the wickiup. "That is my daughter, Kay Wakela's mother," Nana explained. "She is very angry about the disrespect shown to her son. She wanted to refuse you entry to the camp, but I have convinced her to give you a chance." Jacob swallowed hard. "Please tell her I'm deeply sorry and want to learn how to show proper respect." Nana translated, and the woman emerged again, studying Jacob with fierce eyes. She spoke, and Nana translated. "She says white men always say they want to learn, but they never actually listen. They think their ways are superior, and our ways are primitive. She asks if you are like all the other white men, or if you are different. Jacob chose his words carefully. I can't speak for other white men. I can only speak for myself. I've been trading with Apache people for 5 years, and I thought I was being respectful. But I realize now I knew nothing about your culture, beyond the basics of commerce. That ignorance caused me to insult your son, without even knowing I was doing it. I don't think my ways are superior. I think they're just different. And I genuinely want to understand your ways so I never cause this kind of harm again, Nana translated, and Kewekla's mother's expression softened slightly, though suspicion remained. She spoke again, longer this time. Nana turned to Jacob. She says you will be watched carefully. If you show disrespect or arrogance, you will be asked to leave and the matter will be settled differently. But if you show genuine willingness to learn, she will teach you what you need to know. She is a respected woman in our community, keeper of traditions. There is no better teacher. Jacob nodded respectfully to her. I would be honored to learn from her. The woman gestured toward the center of the camp, where several men were constructing additional seating around a large fire pit. Nana explained, Tonight there will be a gathering. Our elders will speak and you will listen. You will hear the stories of Kewekla's lineage, understand who he is and where he comes from. You will learn why treating him as nameless and without family was such a grave insult. I understand, Jacob said, but first I brought gifts. I don't know if they're appropriate, but I tried to choose items that would show respect. From his saddlebag, he pulled out several items he'd brought from the trading post, a high-quality steel hunting knife with an ornate handle, a bolt of deep blue cloth that Apache women prized for making traditional dresses, a bag of pure white glass beads, and several pounds of real coffee, not the cheap substitute he sold to most customers, but the premium beans he kept for special orders. Nana examined the gifts with an expression that suggested cautious approval. He showed them to Kewekla's mother, and they conferred in rapid Apache. Finally, Nana turned back to Jacob. These gifts are acceptable. They show some thought and some understanding of value. But gifts alone do not erase insult. They are only the beginning, he called out, and a boy emerged from one of the wiki-ups, Kewekla, the child Jacob had fed 3 days ago. The boy approached slowly, his expression uncertain. Up close, Jacob could see intelligence in his eyes, a quick awareness that suggested maturity beyond his 12 years. Jacob knelt to bring himself to the boy's eye level, a gesture of respect he'd seen Apache adults use with children. Kewekla, he said carefully, hoping he was pronouncing the name correctly. I am Jacob Miller. I apologize for the disrespect I showed you when you came to my trading post. I did not know your name. I did not ask about your family, and I treated you as if you were alone in the world. This was wrong, and I am here to learn the right way to treat you and your people. The boy looked to his mother, who nodded. Then Kewekla spoke in halting English. You gave me good food. Sweet preserve, very good. But you not ask who I am. You not see me as person with family, with history. You see me only as hungry boy. The simple statement carried more weight than any angry accusation could have. Jacob felt the truth of it settle in his chest. You're right, Jacob said quietly. I saw only what was immediately in front of me. I didn't think about who you were beyond that moment. But I want to learn. I want to understand. Will you teach me? Kewekla studied him with those intelligent eyes, then spoke to his mother in Apache. She responded, and the boy turned back to Jacob. I will teach. But you must really listen, not just hear words. Really listen. Over the next several hours, Jacob experienced a crash course in Apache culture that was both humbling and enlightening. Kewekla's mother, whose name was Guyan, took him through the basic protocols of hospitality and respect. She explained that among the Apache, asking someone's name and lineage wasn't mere politeness. It was fundamental acknowledgement of their humanity and place in the world. A person without acknowledged family and history was essentially invisible, without status or rights. Guyan demonstrated the proper way to offer food to a guest. First, you inquire about their well-being and their family. You offer water before food. You ask if they're traveling alone, or if others need to be invited. You present food with specific phrases that honor the guest and acknowledge the connection being formed. The act of eating together creates bonds and obligations. It's not casual, it's sacred. By feeding Kaiwekla without following these protocols, Jacob had essentially said the boy didn't deserve proper treatment, that he was beneath such considerations. As the sun descended toward the mountains, the evening gathering began. Elders arrived, men and women whose weathered faces spoke of decades navigating the harsh realities of Apache life. They sat in a circle around the fire, and Jacob was placed among them, not as an equal but as a student. Nana stood and began to speak, his voice carrying across the assembled group. Although he spoke primarily in Apache, he periodically translated key points for Jacob's benefit. "This is Kaiwekla," Nana said, gesturing to his grandson. "He is the son of Guyan, daughter of my first wife who died fighting the Mexican soldiers 12 years ago. He is grandson of Nana, war leader and keeper of the old ways. He is great-grandson of Chief Mako, who negotiated the Treaty of 1855. He is descended from a line of warriors, leaders, and medicine people stretching back before the Spanish came to this land. His name means he who walks quietly, given because even as a baby he moved with unusual silence and awareness." Nana continued, detailing Kaiwekla's lineage with precision and pride. Each ancestor was named, their accomplishments recounted, their character described. Jacob began to understand what he'd failed to see. This wasn't just a hungry child. This was a person embedded in a complex web of relationships, responsibilities, and history. By treating him as anonymous, Jacob had essentially erased all of that, suggesting it didn't matter. An elderly woman stood next, her voice strong despite her age. Through Nana's translation, Jacob learned she was a medicine woman, and she spoke about the spiritual significance of food sharing in Apache tradition. Food wasn't just sustenance, it carried the life force of the land, the skills of the hunter or gatherer, the care of the preparer. To share food was to share life itself. When done properly, it created sacred bonds. When done carelessly, it profaned something holy. Another elder spoke about the history of Apache people being treated as invisible by white settlers and soldiers, their names mispronounced or ignored, their family structures dismissed, their children taken to boarding schools where they were stripped of identity and culture. In that context, Jacob's casual treatment of Kaiwekla wasn't just a personal offense. It echoed generations of systematic erasure and disrespect. As Jacob listened, genuine understanding began to dawn. He'd thought he was being kind, but his kindness had been rooted in a worldview that didn't recognize the full humanity and cultural complexity of the person he was helping. It was charity from a position of assumed superiority rather than genuine respect between equals. The insult wasn't intentional, but that didn't make it less harmful. When the formal speeches ended, food was brought out, a communal meal of roasted venison, mesquite bean cakes, gathered wild vegetables, and acorn bread. But before anyone ate, Guyan approached Jacob with a bowl and explained through Nana's translation the proper way to receive and consume food in Apache tradition. First, acknowledge the source of the food and thank the land that provided it. Second, acknowledge the hands that prepared it. Third, eat slowly and with awareness, treating the meal as a sacred act rather than mere fueling of the body. Jacob followed her instructions carefully, and when he took his first bite following the proper protocol, something shifted in the atmosphere. The watching Apache saw that he was genuinely trying, that he was setting aside his own cultural assumptions and entering their world with humility. It wasn't forgiveness exactly, but it was acceptance of his effort. As the meal progressed, warriors who had been silent during the ride began to speak to him, asking questions about his trading post, his background, his life. For the first time, Jacob was being seen as a person rather than a problem. After the meal, Kaiwekla approached shyly and asked in his careful English, "You understand now? Why mother angry? Why grandfather bring many warriors?" Jacob nodded. "I understand. When I fed you at my trading post, I saw only a hungry child. I didn't see Kaiwekla, son of Guyen, grandson of Nana, keeper of a proud lineage. I didn't see that feeding you meant creating a bond that carried obligations and meaning. I treated something sacred as if it was ordinary. That was deeply disrespectful, even though I didn't know it at the time." The boy smiled, the first smile Jacob had seen from any of the Apache since this crisis began. "You learn fast. Maybe you're not so ignorant after all, just not taught right things." Jacob laughed despite himself. That's a fair assessment. I'm glad you're giving me a chance to learn the right things. Kewekla looked at him seriously. At trading post you will do gathering. You will feed many people proper way. Show you understand now. Then insult may be forgiven. That night Jacob slept in a guest wickiup, lying on woven mats that were surprisingly comfortable. He stared up at the framework of poles above him, thinking about everything he'd learned. His entire approach to his trading post business needed to change. He'd been treating it as simple commerce, goods for goods, services for services. But he now understood that every interaction carried cultural weight. That respect required active effort to understand the worldview of the people he served. The next morning, Guyan took him on a walk through the canyon, pointing out plants and explaining their uses, not just practical applications, but their significance in Apache culture and spirituality. She showed him how to identify track signs, how to read the landscape for water and game, how to move through the land with respect rather than domination. It wasn't just practical information, it was a way of seeing the world that honored connection and relationship over exploitation and extraction. Before Jacob departed to return to his trading post, Nana pulled him aside for a final conversation. "You have begun to understand," the war leader said, "but understanding is not the same as transformation. When you return to your trading post, you will be tested. Will you apply what you've learned, or will you slip back into old patterns?" Jacob met his gaze steadily. "I will apply it. I give you my word. The gathering at my trading post will honor Apache traditions properly. And going forward, every Apache person who enters my establishment will be treated with the respect their identity and lineage deserve." Nana nodded slowly. "We will see. In 2 weeks we will come for the gathering you promised. Bring enough food for 100 people. Prepare it in ways that honor our traditions. Guyan will send her sister to help you. And be ready to make your formal apology to Kewekla in front of everyone. This is your chance to transform insult into honor. Do not waste it." Jacob shook his hand in the white way, then clasped his forearm in the Apache manner. "I won't waste it. Thank you for teaching me instead of simply punishing me." As Jacob rode back toward his trading post, accompanied now by 2 young warriors who would help him prepare for the gathering, he felt fundamentally changed. The scared merchant who'd faced 100 angry warriors 3 days ago had been transformed by the experience. He'd been taken apart and reassembled with new understanding. The gathering would be his final test, his chance to prove that his willingness to learn was genuine, that he could bridge the gap between cultures not through ignorant kindness, but through informed respect. The question now was whether he could actually pull it off. The 2 weeks between Jacob's return from the Apache camp and the promised gathering passed in a blur of frantic preparation. The young warriors who'd accompanied him back, brothers named Chato and Nez, remained to help him prepare, but also to observe and report back to Nana. Jacob understood he was still being tested, still being watched for signs of backsliding into his old ignorant ways. Guyan's sister, a woman named Ishtan, arrived 3 days after Jacob's return. She was stern-faced and no-nonsense, speaking limited English but communicating clearly through gestures and the occasional translation from Chato. She inspected Jacob's trading post with a critical eye, pointing out everything that would need to change for the gathering. The interior was too cluttered, too focused on displaying goods for sale. For the gathering, it needed to become a place of welcome and community rather than commerce. Jacob and the 3 Apache worked together, moving inventory to create open space. Setting up long tables outside under a ramadah they constructed from cottonwood poles and canvas. Ishtan showed him how to arrange seating in a circular pattern that honored Apache preferences for communal gathering. She explained which colors of cloth should be used for decoration, which had cultural significance, and which were merely aesthetic. Every detail mattered, she insisted through Chato's translation. Every element either showed respect or showed ignorance. The food preparation was even more complex. Ishtan insisted that simply buying beef and cooking it wouldn't be sufficient. The meal needed to include traditional Apache foods prepared in traditional ways. She took Jacob out to gather mesquite beans, showing him how to identify the right pods and prepare them into flour for cakes. They collected wild onions, several types of edible greens and acorns that required lengthy processing to remove their bitterness. She taught him to prepare venison not just as roasted meat, but in the specific ways Apache cooks had perfected over generations. "This is not just food," Ishton said through Chato one evening as they worked. "This is memory. This is connection to land and ancestors. When Apache people eat these foods, they taste home. They taste belonging. You serve this food, you say, 'I see you as Apache. I honor your ways,' you understand?" Jacob nodded, his hands working to grind mesquite pods as she'd shown him. "I understand. It's about showing that their culture is valuable, that their traditions deserve respect and preservation." Ishton smiled slightly, the first real warmth she'd shown him. "You learn. Maybe you actually listen, not just hear." As the day of the gathering approached, Jacob found himself changing in ways that extended beyond event preparation. When travelers came to the trading post during those 2 weeks, he found himself asking their names, inquiring about their families, taking time to understand who they were beyond just what they wanted to buy. A Mexican vaquero commented on the change. "You're different, señor. Before you were efficient, now you're interested." It's strange but good. Jacob also spent evenings with Chato and Nez, learning more Apache language and customs. Chato was patient, teaching him phrases and explaining cultural nuances. "When you meet Apache person," Chato explained, "first you acknowledge them as person with identity and family. You say, 'I see you. I honor your path. I respect your lineage.' Then you can talk about other things, trade, weather, news. But first, you recognize their humanity. This is foundation." Nez, quieter than his brother, added his own perspective one night. "White people think efficiency most important. Get to point fast. Make trade quick. Move on. Apache people think relationship most important. Take time to know person. Build trust slow. Then trade happens naturally, as extension of relationship. Your mistake with Kewekla. You try to be efficient. You feed him quick, send him away quick. You not build relationship. That is insult." Jacob absorbed these lessons, realizing how much his Pennsylvania merchant upbringing had shaped assumptions he'd never examined. His father had taught him that time was money, that efficiency was virtue, that personal relationships should be secondary to business success. But out here on the frontier, interfacing with Apache culture, those values created harm. Building genuine relationships required time, attention, and willingness to set aside the pursuit of efficiency in favor of deeper human connection. Over the following months, Jacob's trading post indeed transformed. Word spread among Apache communities that Miller's trading post was a place where proper protocols were respected, where cultural traditions were honored, where Apache people could trade as equals rather than as inferior parties to be exploited. Business actually increased as Apache groups began choosing Jacob's post over other trading establishments, specifically because of the respect they received. But the change went deeper than business success. Jacob found himself becoming something of a cultural translator, helping white travelers understand Apache customs, explaining to Apache traders the confusing aspects of white commercial practices. He mediated misunderstandings before they became conflicts, always remembering the lesson he'd learned so painfully, that ignorance, even well-intentioned, could cause genuine harm. Kewekla became a regular visitor, and Jacob took his role as educator seriously, teaching the boy reading, writing, and arithmetic, not to make him more white, but to give him tools that might help him navigate an increasingly complex world. In return, Kewekla taught Jacob deeper nuances of Apache language, stories from his cultural heritage, and practical skills like tracking and identifying medicinal plants. 1 year after the gathering, as Jacob and Kewekla sat outside the trading post, watching the sunset paint the Guadalupe Mountains in shades of orange and purple, the boy spoke thoughtfully. "You know what I tell other Apache children? I tell them about the trader who made big mistake but learned from it. I say this shows white men can change if they willing to listen. Gives hope that maybe our peoples can live together with respect instead of always fighting." Jacob felt emotion tighten his throat. "That's generous of you, considering I'm the one who insulted you in the first place." Kewekla shrugged. "Everybody makes mistakes. What matters is what you do after. You could have made excuses, could have gotten angry when grandfather brought warriors. Instead, you listened. You learned. You changed. That is honorable. As the boy headed back toward the Apache camp in the mountains, Jacob reflected on the journey of the past year. A simple act of feeding a hungry child, done with good intentions but cultural ignorance, had brought 100 angry warriors to his door. That crisis could have ended in violence and destruction. Instead, it had become an opportunity for genuine transformation, for building bridges between cultures that had too often been enemies. The lesson had been painful but invaluable. Kindness without understanding is not enough. Respect requires effort, learning, and willingness to set aside assumptions about how the world works. Every culture has protocols and values that matter deeply to its people. Ignoring those protocols, even unintentionally, causes real harm. But when people are willing to listen, learn, and change, even serious insults can be transformed into deeper understanding. Jacob looked at his trading post, no longer just a place of commercial exchange, but a genuine meeting ground where different worlds intersected with mutual respect. The sign above his door, which once simply read Miller's Trading Post, now had a second line added in Apache script, which translated to Place where all are seen and honored. It had been Nana's suggestion, and Jacob had accepted it gratefully. The feeding mistake that had gotten 100 warriors angry had ultimately taught Jacob Miller the most important lesson of his life, that in the diverse, complex, and often divided world of the frontier, the path to peace wasn't paved with good intentions alone. It required genuine effort to understand, respect, and honor the full humanity and cultural richness of every person who crossed your threshold. That understanding, hard-won through crisis and transformation, had changed not just his business, but his entire way of being in the world. And as the stars began to emerge in the darkening Texas sky, Jacob felt grateful for the angry warriors who'd surrounded his cabin that terrifying morning. They hadn't come to destroy him, they'd come to teach him. And in learning their lessons, he'd become someone worth being, not just a merchant, but a bridge builder, a student of cultures, and a man who finally understood that respect wasn't something you gave casually, but something you practiced with intention, humility, and constant awareness that every interaction mattered. The mistake had been costly, but the education had been priceless, and Jacob Miller would spend the rest of his life proving that he'd learned the lesson well.